Hey everybody, Miro Joe here. I want to show you how to paint an underwater scene. So I'm not just going to show you my techniques. I'm going to show you how I know where to put the colors to give it that look of the light blasting through and coming down through that water and hitting the sea floor. There's a reason it looks the way it does. And when you know that, you can invent your own techniques. So let's get started with lesson 1. Okay, for starters, I need to decide what my sky is going to look like. And I'm thinking I want to do some sunset colors in there and make the sun low in the sky so that I can make that light blasting through my water. Then I can show you that effect of light coming through the water real extremely. It'll be more obvious that way. So it's a good idea to establish the light source first, because then you know how bright not to make everything else, because it's not going to look like an accent if everything else is just as bright. It's not going to look like the light source if other things are just as bright in the picture. So I'll see how that looks before I decide the colors for the rest of the picture. Now I have a video on YouTube, how to paint a sunset. But this is just going to be the quick version. Fastest sunset I ever painted. Alright, so let's go one here. It's a good idea to keep track of how many brush loads I put on my surface. And by the way, this is just gray paint that I have on here. And I just cover anything I'm going to paint with a gray because that covers really easily. Other colors I put over it are going to cover gray a lot more easily than, say, a bright red over a bright green. You're going to see that base coat through it. So gray is easy to cover. Makes a good base coat. And I troweled it smooth. You know, I used a trowel. I don't know if I have it here. I have it sitting over there on the ground. I just used a paint trowel like you use for drywall mud to smooth it out after I brushed that paint on, because it helps get rid of all of the little ugly bits of texture that I don't like. Anyway, back to the painting. So I've got 2 blobs of white on there. 1, 2, 3. I want to put enough on there that I know it'll cover my whole sky area. 1, 2, 3, 4. Probably 5 is good. Now, whenever you see that bright ball of sun in a sky scene and it's got those sunset colors in it, it always changes color in this area, in this order. The brightest area is the whitest area, and as it gets dimmer, it gets yellower and it gets redder, and then it gets maybe violet before it fades to the blue sky if it has blue sky. So the order of colors is very important. How much of the color is not important. So I'll do some yellow right here. My sun will be here. I'll put yellow right there. And then I think I could probably afford to do a little more yellow. Let's say that much. Next color over, because it's getting dimmer as it goes this way, will be the red. Let's get a little bit more. Next color over, maybe all the way in the corners, because I want it to be circular, following the pattern of the sun blasting through maybe a watery looking sky with a lot of mist in it, like it's the ocean. So I'll just put a little bit of blue on. I don't want to have a lot down in here. Maybe this will be mostly orange by the horizons. Maybe up in here is where the blue will be. And maybe we'll just put a little dab up in here also. I think that's enough. All right, so now we're done with our sky, and we're going to move to the water. No, I'm just kidding with you. Now we got to blend it together. So I'll clean out my brush. Like I'm making a fire, you know, I just spin it to get the water out. You can make a real mess if you don't keep that brush straight up and down when you're doing this. Now it's time to smear the paint around, and so I'm going to keep that water handy. And once I start smearing this paint around, it's going to start drying fast. See, so this is where I want the yellow, right outside that inner ring where the sun is brightest. Then it's going to be the red next. I'll just grab some of that white in there and pull it over here. get a little bit more of this white. I don't think I put enough. Put a bunch in the middle and use the rest out here. You'll see me through the course of the job constantly dipping into that water bucket because the paint dries fast and it's, you know, it just keeps it moving around for me. Just like this. Let's use some of that white over here again. Now it's okay for these colors to bleed into each other as long as I still have the order visible. It's actually better if they bleed into each other. It's going to look more natural that way. The blues in a sunset sky are never very vivid blues because they're mixed with opposite colors like red and orange. So I don't want that bright blue up in there. When you see me come down like this and do this with my brush, I'm just getting rid of paint. Just getting it out of my brush. Okay. Just trying to smooth out these colors now. You can take paint from one side and put it on the other to try to even things out. I do that a lot, like this, to try to make things more symmetrical or try to balance out the colors. All right, I'm liking the way that's looking as far as the way the colors are distributed. Now if I just kind of pull the brush across slower, it'll do a better job of doing a soft blend. I do this a lot where I'll unload it, go across, unload it, go across, unload it. I'll just repeat that. It's kind of a very red spot right there. We'll try to feather that out. Got to move to my left hand. My right arm got tired. See, my brush is real dirty, so when I come back to these brighter colors, I might get some of those dirty colors in it. But it's okay. The order of the colors is still there, and when I'm done with this and it's all dry, I'm going to put a big bright white ball right in the middle to be the sun. And that'll reestablish my brightest spot. Okay, this is getting hard to work now because the paint's drying, so I might start ruining it if I keep pulling it around. So if there's any spots in my sky that I don't like later, I'll just put a cloud over it. Next will be the water. And so I'll just start blending the surface of the water right up into the sky probably. I'll just fade it up in there. I'll show you how to do this gradient of the water next. Now, for the same reason that the sunlight goes from this violet to the red as it gets brighter, and then to the yellow as it gets even brighter, and then finally to the white at its brightest, for that same reason, the sunlight in the water is going to go from the deepest, most violet blues in the shadows, and then change to a more brilliant blue and a more greenish blue as it comes up to the most bright sunlit areas of the tips of the waves, and it just gradually gets darker and more of the deeper, more violet blue into the shadows. So I'll show you. When I'm doing a gradient, and I'm going to need a lot of water for this paint, this is real thick. All of these gradients that I do, a good strategy is to remember how much of each color you put on. So let's say my darkest color is going to be right in here. So let's go 1 brush load, 2 brush loads, and let's make it 3. Now, these are not exactly the same amount of paint, but you'd be surprised just how similar they are, because you get used to dipping the same amount in, you do it over and over, they end up pretty much the same. And so I can rely on this giving me somewhat of a formula if I need to remix that color somewhere else on this board or in a storage container like these little things I got from the grocery store. So I'm going to add maybe a little bit of red to that. Let's do a little red. So I'm going to remember that it was this much red, just that little triangle. And I feel like that might be too much, but let's just do it. All right, then I'm going to get rid of this paint right here. I don't want any more on my brush. It's okay if there's a little, because I'm still using those same colors. Now up here's my bright color, so we'll go green. I have my green down here. All right. Brush load of green. We'll do 1 of those, and we'll do an relatively equal amount of blue, and then what it's going to need is white. So let's do 1, 2, 3 white. This is my bright watercolor. So now I know I've got 3 white to 1 blue to 1 green on this. Whether that's ounces or pounds. It's not going to be pounds. Okay. Kilograms, grams. I'm not sure what you'd measure paint in other than, I guess you could do like milliliters. Maybe they do that in Europe. Maybe everywhere besides America. All right. I like that color. I mean, I like it all right. Let's add 1 more white. So now I'm up to 4 parts white. Now I'm not doing this half because I want to show you how by memorizing those ratios I can get a real close match. Save myself a headache. Now I'm going to start fading this down. Now I got to be careful. I don't want to hit this red too quick, so I'm going to start fading the blue in. Just bring this blue right up in here. That red is going to be for these lowest, darkest colors. So I'll just kind of scrape it off there. I should have put it down at the bottom, that red. wonder if there's another way to get that red right up here. There, that'll be all right. Get a little bit of water in here to blend it. I always use this kind of figure 8 pattern just to pull the colors together. Then I blend them, you know, soften it after I get them distributed. It's kind of fun. It's a good way to work out your arm, I'll tell you that. Okay. I want it to be a nice even transition, nice gradual transition, rather. I don't want it to look like there's a blue half and a green half. I want it to be nice and continuous. So this gradient is like a gradient of the light green that stops here, and this gradient of dark blue goes all the way and stops at the top. They overlap each other. So in the middle, it's very good to have them mix with each other a lot. Which means that the only area on this that is my original colors that I mixed is the very top and the very bottom. So for that reason, I know to mix a bright color that's overall brighter than what I want the result to look like, a little brighter. And same with the shadow, overall a little darker than what I want the end result to look like, because I'm mixing the light color into it all except for that very bottom strip. I'm just looking for areas that look splotchy, trying to smear them out. You know, all of this color theory, you can use it with any kind of medium. It's just the way, you know, colors react with each other and the way we perceive those different relationships of color that we're looking at. It's not really the medium or the exact technique that causes the picture to look natural or unnatural. I mean, I guess really bad technique couldn't make a picture look bad. Yeah, I'm liking the way that looks. You know, I'm kind of torn on this because I might want sun rays coming down like this, and it might be good if I don't know if it's too late to do it now, but might be cool if I kind of made lines like that. Yeah, it actually looks all right. Never done that one before. One, two, three. Then I did this little triangle of red, and this time I'm going to put it right down there. And then my greens were one green. That was a really big brush load of green, if I could tell. One blue. Those look similar. And then 4 white. 1, 2, 3, 4. So, notice that I don't go straight to making my gradient. I get my get these ratios mixed first, get the two first colors mixed. Now, it's much easier just to pre-mix these colors in one of these. I'm doing this because I can, and it's good for demonstration, but really, when I'm doing a job, I'll most of the time pre-mix colors in one of these if I know what color I'm trying to get to. I'll do this as maybe a primer coat, and then pre-mix it after I've decided what my colors are going to be. So this is a good creative stage using this technique. All right, then we start out in this blue. You can see that I had a lot of green on that one. Put this shadow color down here. Oh, this one's coming out better, even though I think I did do way too much green right there. So I'm going to wash my brush. See if I can add a little more blue and white to reduce that green ratio. There's some blue. Yeah. Sometimes when I'm doing a gradient on a big wall, I'll use this method across the whole thing. I'll just remember how many brush loads of each color, and I'll just do section, 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 section. They'll all be a little bit different from each other. And it'll just create a diverse look altogether that sometimes looks more interesting than solid colors. All right, now I have to see if I can make that same sun ray effect in here. I wasn't even going to do this. I don't think that it's necessary for the picture to do these rays. So this is not a crucial part of getting the look here. I don't want to mislead you. All right, I better let that dry. I think I'm gonna brighten this too. I'll let it dry because it'll get all boogery now if I try to overlap paint that's halfway dry. It started to do that in here. So something to remember with water-based paint is that overlapping edges should be done after the paint is dry, and then you are always mindful to keep water in your paint so that it doesn't dry ultra fast and leave you real ugly edges. But that half dry is the worst. It pulls and leaves these weird skid mark looking things all over your painting. That is the downside to using wall paint to paint a mural, is that it doesn't leave the real pretty brush strokes that artist acrylics or artist oils will leave. Those are nicer on the finish. But this is fast for big pictures. Now I have one more gradient to do. I want to make the sea floor. So I'm going to do that with a light, like sand color, so maybe just a very light tan, maybe like the color of this wood. So when I think of white sand on the beach, I want it to look like real light colored sand. I think of a white that is just barely has some orange and maybe brown in it. And that would be like a light color like this. And I'll mix that with this. This will be one end of the gradient, and that'll be the other end. Now for the sea floor. I dropped the camera down in my rolly cart too so that you can have a good view here. Now a side note is, if you use this method with counting your brush loads, a smaller brush with more of those brush loads is much more accurate than 2 or 3 with the giant brush. So let's do a couple of white here. This will be the bottom of my gradient. And let's do some red in there. Let's do some yellow. And up at the top, I just need my blue. So I don't want to have this yellow in there when I do that. That little tiny bit's probably not going to show up. So let's go 1. I don't want a lot of it in there. Let's just do 3 little brush loads and then do a little tiny bit of red. And it had white too because I brought that white down into it, so I better add some white. Let's see where that gets me. I want this to altogether be a little lighter than the dry paint. Wet paint is always lighter than dry paint, and it darkens as it dries. So if you want to match a color, you can practice getting better at judging that color, how it's going to dry. Yeah, I think that's going to match pretty close. You can see that difference there. I'm probably a little off like I always am, but it's pretty close. I'll settle for it. And another thing that's going to make it more forgivable is that it's fading into a lighter color down here anyway. Probably should get that dark color all the way across before I get too much of my bright color in there. I don't think I did quite enough. Water. Just trying to match that color above as close as I can. Maybe the ground shouldn't be level. Maybe I'll bring this up a little bit in here. Maybe there's a drop off back there. Yeah, I think I want to go a little darker. Okay, good enough. Then I'll start blending it down. It's okay for the blue to get down here. That's what I wanted. I want everything to be colored by the blue because there's a big blue canopy of water right over the top of where the sun is shining. Spreading out that red and yellow. That really makes it come forward. That's, you know, under this sea floor, that's the only warm color in this whole area, so it just pops right out of that deep blue. Creates depth. Now once again, I'm trying to make it very gradual. I don't want it to look like two separate colors. I want it to be real continuous looking so that it just travels right back into the picture. You know, the reason that I don't just pre-mix these colors and say, put this color here and blend them together, well, because I just think it really helps a person's understanding of what is actually happening between the colors to create the look. And I want you to see that. I want you to see that it's not an exact shade of light tan and an exact shade of blue that creates the look. It's the fact that as it gets brighter, it's getting to more of the light tan. As it gets darker, it's getting to more of the deep water color. It's that relationship that creates the look. I can make this any color I wanted to, as long as I was real careful to make that relationship between those two colors. I'm going to try washing out my brush to get the light color out of it, and then see if it'll do a better job at blending this darker color that's starting to dry on me up here. This looks very light right now, but watch how much it'll darken. It's just that it's very watery. Makes that real light, streaky look. You know, another thing that I like about working with primaries, and you know, everything has its pros and cons, but I like that it leaves remnants of the original colors and you get a more diverse, what's the word for it? Diverse picture in the end, you know, where every pixel's a different color. Every little area is a different color. Because you don't have one area that's all one mix of paint. Every single little tiny area has a lot of variation because you used 3 primaries to create everything. And I think that it has that in common with more realistic looking pictures where no 2 pixels really look exactly the same. That's getting real streaky, so I'll just pull off of it, let it dry, and touch up anything if I don't like it later. You know, sometimes your hand is a real good blending tool. If you're careful, you know, I'm moving slow because if I move fast, it'll pull it right off of there.